this is something that I feel like we see a lot, especially with Lewis and his team, where they're arguing over the radio because he's always like, put me on this tyre, I should be on this tyre, why have you put me on this tyre? And that's like obviously the first kind of time that I saw a bit of sassiness actually and a bit of assertiveness from George, where he was like, you should put me on this tyre and put me at this point, like I want to stay out longer and blah blah blah. And they weren't listening to the driver. Sorry, I'm just rambling here, but
I'm actually just sitting here like, wow, that is well remembered. Like, no notes. Girl just did that off the
yeah,
top of her head. You're like, yeah,
I
that's what
am.
happened, and then that's
I
what
don't know
happened.
why. I think this was the weekend that Ricciardo really needed, and especially considering that he's on his way out. So, yeah, what did you think of that?
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't so impressed. Like,
What? Hello and welcome back to On the Chicane. You are here with me, Marium, and my co-host, Paris, as ever. And we're here to talk about all things Mexico City. We had the Mexico City Grand Prix this weekend just gone. All in all, it was a pretty dull race. Not much happened. I could have fallen asleep watching it if I weren't working and needing to be online. Um, yeah, I was very underwhelmed considering that like the track is a fast track. It's short, it's speedy, and it's got like the fastest straight on the F1 calendar. So there should have been a lot of like overtaking and some nuts driving, but there really wasn't. It was boring, and yeah, I feel like I'm kind of done with F1. There's two races left to go. Let's see how the season pans out.
wow, I wouldn't say I'm done with F1. I think it's an interesting season to look back on because you had the regulations and stuff like that, but I don't think it's been as exciting of a season as perhaps everybody wanted. So
Yeah,
I get what you mean in that sense. It's like, all right, come on, hurry up, get this season over and done with. We've done the like the first season of the regulations, and let's quickly get to 2023 where we can now see some of that development being put into practice and actually start seeing maybe some of the other teams up there, compared to who we've had up there, which has literally just been Red Bull for the whole season. Um, yeah, I mean, I agree. It was total snooze for the whole 90 minutes or however long it was on for. I did not fall asleep, managed not to. I watched all of it, but only because I was on like tenterhooks thinking, okay, now something's going to happen. There's going to be a safety car. There's going to be, like some amazing overtake that couldn't have happened anywhere else. Like it was just not the greatest race, in my opinion.
honestly, I don't really have much to comment on with this race. Like we had two DNFs. That was Alonso and Sonoda. I think it was Yuki, yeah. Two DNFs. Max won. Checo managed to get onto the podium. Mercedes pace was here there. I guess the only thing that people are commenting on is the whole Mercedes strategy situation thing and George, because there was a point where, so, okay, tires were a big part of this race because for some reason, no team could figure out which tires to be on. So we had all three compounds. We had soft, medium, hards, obviously. And I think pretty much most people started on the mediums, which seemed to be the right tire. Then a lot of people switched to softs, and then some people switched to hards. Some of the Mercedes boys switched to hards. And there was a whole conversation around like, is Mercedes doing the right thing? And then I think a few teams saw Mercedes pace, saw that it was going well, so also switched to hards, and then realized that actually hards weren't probably the best option. However, that being said, Lewis managed to get himself onto the podium on hards. Everyone this race had one pit stop except from Stroll, who pitted twice for two different sets of softs. So Sorry, I'm just rambling here, but
I'm actually just sitting here like, wow, that is well remembered. Like, no notes. Girl just did that off the
yeah,
top of her head. You're like, yeah,
I
that's what
am.
happened, and then that's
I
what
don't know
happened.
why. I've just really got tires in my head, but like I just know that the situation with George, where he switched and he wanted to go on to the mediums, I want to say, or the softs, I can't remember, but his team put him on hards. I think he wanted to go on to the softs.
Yeah, he
Uh,
wanted to stay on the mediums for a longer period of time, and they kind of put him a little bit early and put him onto the hards. I think, what do you feel like with Mercedes? Do you think that they made good strategy calls? Um, they said at the beginning of the weekend, I can't remember if it was Andrew Shovlin or Toto Wolff, but one of them said that they were going to try and be bold because they had nothing to lose and they were going to do whatever it took to get a win this weekend, because they felt like they were close enough to get it. And to be fair to them, whilst I think pace during the race showed that they weren't actually close enough, like the Red Bull was just far away from them at the end of the day. It was like 15 seconds ahead
yeah,
at the very last, or like even 30 seconds at the end of the race. But I think they've made so much gains. Like at the beginning of the year, we'd never have been talking about them being on the podium. So in that sense, but what do you think, Mercedes? Do you think they made like good choices, bad choices? We've often kind of slated their strategies on here. What do you think?
so it's hard because, like you say, Mercedes, uh, I think the Mercedes powered cars, especially Mercedes themselves and Aston Martin, are probably the two teams that have made the biggest gains this season. Um, Somehow they've managed to kind of turn their luck around, and Mercedes are now seeing podiums again, which is great to see. They definitely made the right strategy call for Lewis because obviously he managed to get P2. It wasn't, I mean, he had nowhere near the same pace as Max because, like you say, at one point there was like 30 seconds between them. Um, but obviously for Lewis, it worked out. He managed to get himself up to P2. Like Checo couldn't catch up to him. So, it obviously worked out for Lewis. However, for George's setup, so if any of you have seen, I went to a athletes thing yesterday by Meta. It was really cool because I got to meet a few different people, speak to a few different people, and there were loads of people who were discussing the race on Sunday. And everyone was like, George made the right call. The team should have listened to him, which I thought was quite interesting because, I just, at the end of the day, we don't have all the data, right? But everyone was kind of saying, he was like, put me on softs and like the team should have just listened to him and hopefully like he could have got a podium. And I'm like, really? But then at the same time, if you think about it, there were points where George's pace, like he seemed to be picking up and seemed to be catching Checo, but then couldn't quite manage it. So I'm thinking maybe if he was in a different tire, he might have managed it. But I don't know.
I think yeah, definitely. So actually, it was George who was like 30 seconds off of Perez, and actually Lewis was 15 seconds off of Verstappen over the finish line. So got a little bit backwards there. But I think for me, Mercedes are just not dynamic enough with their strategy calls. I think even when they're trying to be bold, they're not bold enough. Like you've got two Mercedes who are really, really doing really well, right? You've got both of them. George qualified in second, which is I think his first time all year, or perhaps the second time this year. Lewis qualified in third. So for the first time, you've got two Mercedes in the top three, right? And you can, regardless of if you're going to end up on the top step or not, like you can still use that a bit to your advantage. And I feel like with George, when they realize that, okay, yes, the hard at the time when they made the decision was probably the best tire to go on because natural common sense would tell you that the Mercedes, the medium tires will fall off faster, and if you've got hards you can extend your stint to the end of the race.
Mhm.
However, 20, 30 laps down the line when it's like lap 60 and you're coming up to the end, why not just then take a chance and put George back onto the softs? Yes, he would have had to pit. Yes, that would have put him probably at the time another 15 seconds or 20 seconds behind Checo. But you could see from Daniel Ricciardo that being on the softs meant that you possibly could make those positions up. So it would have been a much better battle, I think, with Perez at the end. And maybe as much as the Red Bulls are a better car still at the moment, but maybe we might have got a little bit more fighting for that third podium place.
I think that's fair, very fair to say. And to be fair, I do think like this is something that I feel like we see a lot, especially with Lewis and his team, where they're arguing over the radio because he's always like, put me on this tire, I should be on this tire, why have you put me on this tire? And that's like obviously the first kind of time that I saw a bit of sassiness actually and a bit of assertiveness from George, where he was like, you should put me on this tire and pit me at this point, like I want to stay out longer and blah blah blah. And they weren't listening to their driver. So it does make you wonder, like, obviously, George isn't an official second driver. However, he is a second driver. So, like Red Bull seem to be doing, why not take a chance with your second driver and actually be like, okay, fine, let's actually listen to him and see if he's actually onto something? Because I feel like that might be the issue between Mercedes and their driver. There seems to be a disconnect throughout the race where the driver's noticing something on the track and thinking, I should be on, X compound because it'll be better for my tires. I can, like, they're there feeling what's around them. They're on the track driving. So obviously they've got a bit of an idea of what will work, and they're not stupid. Like, how much time do they spend with their engineers? Like, they know what they're talking about. But then you've obviously got the Mercedes guys in the garage who are like assessing their data and being like, actually, no, we think this is what you should do. Sometimes it works out in their favor, sometimes it doesn't. But I feel
I
like
think
you're
more often than
right
not, the strategy doesn't work in their favor. I think more often than not, you have Lewis Hamilton driving the socks off of a car that isn't set up correctly. Like
there.
even on Sunday, like his car, the engine was it the engine or the power or something was dropping out. Remember, he kept complaining, it's dropping out, it's dropping out, it's dropping out. And he always has to kind of battle against his team. And then if you contrast that with a team that is well oiled when it comes to their strategy calls, well oiled when it comes to the way they like dynamically work and listen to their driver, like Red Bull, like in all honesty, they're hitting it hard when it comes to the strategies. Like they know how to be flexible, they know how to change between like different compounds of tires, they know how to freaking get a pit stop in less than 2.7 seconds. Like, come on. I don't know. For me, I'm Mercedes strategy team and their pit stop team still leave a lot to be desired. And I think the aero team and the drivers are pulling them forwards at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair analysis. And I think, like you said, they're like they're like taking risks, but they're not jumping all the way in. They're kind of keeping one arm out whilst they're trying to like swim across. And it's like you're not really helping yourselves there. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's gonna have to be a lot of work done throughout winter, and something needs to change between the whole driver team dynamic there because they just don't ever really seem to listen to their drivers. But another person that you just mentioned, which I completely forgot about, but is definitely well worth a mention, is the Honey Badger, Danny Rick. What a bloody race for him. So I think everyone else had a pretty shit race. It wasn't anything exciting, but Ricciardo was back to his old ways and overtaking left, right, centre, flying on that track. And considering like how bad his weekend was in America the week before, I think this was the weekend that Ricciardo really needed, and especially considering that he's on his way out. So yeah, what did you think of that?
I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't so impressed. Like,
What?
I wasn't. I love seeing great driving. I do. But literally, what was it like lap 50? of the 18th race of the season or the 19th race, whatever bloody race you're on, now's when you decide to pull it out your freaking ass. Like, I'm sorry, but I just don't understand where that pace came from, where it's been for the last however many races. What changed all of a sudden just for those like 15 laps? I really don't understand. So for me, yes, I get it, like why people gave driver of the day, but I don't know. To me, it just seemed a bit fickle. Like everyone's just forgetting how badly he's done this year. And
Yeah.
yes, he's been a driver that's like has proven himself many times in the past. Like when he was driving at Red Bull, he was an amazing driver. He everyone always says like he hasn't forgotten how to do that. But I just really didn't understand why he could do that all of a sudden in the middle of this race and hasn't been able to do it. Anytime anybody's asked him, why are you not getting it with the McLaren? He's just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just not hitting it for me. It's just not there. No, no, no. So I don't know. I couldn't be impressed by it because I was very confused more than anything.
I think it was impressive for most people because of the fact that he's just been doing so badly this year that it was almost like, wow, like this is incredible. And like you kind of like obviously we will never forget how good he was back in his Red Bull days, but like you do kind of like forget that he's got it in him, especially after being so defeated race after race. But I think the only thing that will like kind of keep that momentum going is seeing how he fares in the last two races. Obviously, we've got Brazil, which is kind of a similar track to Mexico in that it's like obviously not altitude wise, but you know, like it's short, blah blah blah. Abu Dhabi is a very different track. So I don't know, maybe it was just maybe I don't know where did Norris come in the end, but maybe the altitude actually worked out well for them. But yeah, I don't know. There was just something going on, and he was flying. He was really picking it up, and
He
even though,
actually beat Norris. Like he came
yeah,
seventh and Norris came ninth. Yeah.
I was gonna say, even though he got that 15-second time penalty, like it was still really nice to see him just picking it up and just lapping cars and doing what he usually, well, used to do. Um, but yeah, so next driver is Alonso. So obviously, following on from the US Grand Prix where he had an incident with Stroll, finished seventh, then got a post-race penalty which pushed him to like 14th, which was then rescinded. So then he managed to get back to seventh. And then we had Mexico last weekend. Um, but Alonso kind of ended up DNFing because he had engine issues. So, I mean, I was literally just like calm as a bitch.
I felt like it was a calmer situation. He was talking a lot this weekend. You know, he had a lot to say off track about Lewis Hamilton and how valuable his championships are and all this kind of stuff. And I think for me, him not valuing another championship, like a world champion, knowing as a world champion himself like what it takes to actually get one. I think that's a bit shitty of him, to be honest. Um, I think, you know, as fans, we devalue Max Verstappen's 2021 championship. But there's lots of people in this world who will say, you know, like look at the way he drove last year, blah blah blah, not taking into account all the other things he did last year. But you know, so I think, you know, as a driver, he should be one of the people that has the most respect for other people's championships, not the least. And I think when it comes to Lewis, he just has no respect, zero respect. So I'm not gonna lie, during the race, when Lewis lapped him and there was like blue flags waved and seeing Lewis lap Alonso after the crap that he said. Did you see Lewis's meme where he was like, um, what a guy. Like honestly, I don't know. I agree. Karma, he's not had a good couple of weekends, really, has he?
So honestly, like I just think literally what you've just said, like he knows what it takes to get a championship, and he's obviously had issues with Vettel and like lost out on championships and stuff in the past. I genuinely just think he's a bitter man. I don't know what this situation is that he's got going on with Max, where he just seems to love sniffing whatever comes out of his arse, but it's exhausting, and I don't understand it. Like even Max isn't that much of a dick, but Alonso just seems to like love to just run his mouth and chat shit. So honestly, like it was really nice to see the whole situation play out with Hamilton lapping him, and that picture. I posted it on our Instagram. I don't know if it was, I think it was on our Twitter as well, where Lewis is like in the cool down room sipping on his bottle, and then Alonso is just like retired on the screen. Oh my god, I actually might frame it and put it in this office, because what an iconic moment.
Yeah, that was hilarious because honestly, as well, it was like Lewis just sips tea and you could almost just see the corner of his mouth turn up because he was like, yeah, you know. Love to see it. Love to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think elsewhere on the grid, couple just generals that we haven't really mentioned. Stroll and Vettel, how did they do this week? And
Yeah.
ugh, after they had
Like,
so many good races.
yeah, honestly, like it looked like their pace. I don't know, maybe it was just the high altitude in Mexico that like just didn't do any favors for the Mercedes powered cars. But like Alonso and Vettel, like I say, their car, the AMR 22, has really picked up. And now we're kind of starting to see the kind of pace that it's got and the potential. But Mexico was just awful. They were both like what, 14th and 15th, I think. That's where they finished. Um, Alonso's and sorry, not Alonso, Stroll's tyre strategy. I have no idea what that was about, because he was the first driver to pit, like on lap 16 or something, switched for softs, and it was like, why are you going for softs so early when your mediums are fine for now? You can keep going on them. The softs are obviously gonna, wear down very quickly, which is why he was the only driver to have two pit stops. But again, they put him on softs. So I don't know. But yeah, the Astons did not have a very good weekend.
None of your boys had a
The
good weekend.
Ferrari.
Ferrari.
Yeah, I was just about to say, where were they? Like,
They were like missing from the chat. They were just like snoozing in the back. Honestly, oh man, I was expecting like the last few races, everybody's kind of found their little rhythm, and maybe we'd be getting some battles. Charles and Carlos were just like, nah,
they were nowhere to be
we'll just
seen.
chill here.
Yeah, it was a nothing race for them. Shocking strategy. Just I don't know what happened. I'm honestly,
They
I
got
know I keep
five,
saying
fifth
it.
and sixth, which is obviously it's not bad. Like they literally other than but it's not bad in the sense of you got, Red Bull, Mercedes, and then the two Ferraris. So they are still top six, but they were just completely missing from the race. I don't even remember thinking about them the whole time.
Yeah, they weren't really shown much, and like Leclerc was kind of just, literally just driving by himself for a long while. So it was a bit of a nothing race for the Ferraris, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like I say, I keep saying it, and I don't know if it's just me just trying to make excuses for everyone, but I'm putting it down to the high altitude. Mexico's like up here, isn't it? So I'm just gonna say there's like no air. So that's why they're struggling. I don't actually know if that's true, but
Yeah, it's a plausible scenario. Um, yeah, anything else? What else has been happening around this weekend?
so the one thing I did want to touch upon is obviously the fact that today it was announced that Stoffel Van Dorn is going to be Aston Martin's reserve driver. Now, next year we've got Nick De Vries on the grid. Stoffel's moved from a Mercedes kind of background to Aston, which leaves space for Hulkenberg, who was Aston's reserve driver. And there's loads of rumours around Hulkenberg at the moment, potentially coming into Haas, and Ricciardo becoming Mercedes reserve driver. So how do you feel about that? if that was to play out like that.
So, if anybody doesn't know, Stoffel Van Dorn is a Belgian, I believe, another Belgian on the grid, racing driver, and he currently drives or has spent the last few seasons driving for McLaren's Formula E team. And he used to be a McLaren F1 driver. So he used to be, I think 2016, 2017, 2018. So I think he did 2 or 3 seasons. And he was like there at the same time as Alonso. Um, so he's well known to the Formula One family, and I'm not surprised that they've kind of brought someone in at Aston who they seem to like people who have like got a lot of experience. They've gone for Stroll, they've gone for Vettel, they like Hulkenberg. They seem to like people that really know what they're doing. So that kind of makes sense. I'm guessing, like you said, it was to free up Hulkenberg to be able to be a free agent and move to any team that he wants to. So that would make sense if he does potentially end up in Haas. However, also like Mick Schumacher probably won't be on the grid. Let's also mention that he's probably not going to be on the grid next year, which I mean I don't blame Haas. I wouldn't say that he's particularly shown himself well, but actually I do feel a bit sorry for him because last year he had Mazepin as a teammate. So to me, this is Mick's rookie year, and I kind of do feel like they should give him another year, but at the same time, he hasn't really done very much with what he's had. So anyway, and then yeah, Danny Rick going to Merck. Like I said a few videos back, we were saying he might end up as a reserve driver for Red Bull. I think for Merck is a softer cushion for him to land on because imagine the humble pie that he would have to eat to go back up into Red Bull.
Yeah, I just don't see that happening, to be honest. I feel like the whole Danny Rick Red Bull relationship is done. The done. Like I don't think there's any going back there. So yeah, I would say I feel like Mercedes would actually be quite a good fit for Ricciardo, and he's said that he wants to come back onto the grid. So I don't know. We'll see where he lands in 2024. But I think for next year, it's a good option for him. It's a safe option, and it keeps him close to the sport as well. Like as opposed to going to another series like FE or something, at least he's staying close to F1 so that if he does want to come back, hopefully it'll be slightly easier for him.
Yeah.
Uh,
I feel like the only person that seems to have 9 lives when it comes to Formula One is Nico Hulkenberg, because he just ends up back in everybody's car whenever he needs to be, and he's always kind of on the peripherals. I don't know if Danny Rick's gonna be as lucky because there are just so many new young faces coming up in Formula One, and I think all of those spots and slots are really going to be taken. It's going to be really difficult for him to slot back in. If Nico Hulkenberg makes it back in Haas, it's just really, really lucky. And I
yeah,
actually think that if Danny Rick can drag the feet out from underneath Nico Hulkenberg and get into the Haas seat, he should.
yeah,
It's better for
that
him to
would
be
be
on the
great.
grid than not on the
Honestly,
grid.
like it's surprising. Like if Nico does come back into the sport, it would be very surprising because he's been out for like what 2, 3 years now. That's quite a long time for a driver to be out of the sport and to not really be racing because he's not been in any other series. He's been at Aston's reserve.
Yeah,
So
literally, he's driven 1 race this year, I think. 1 race or 2 races
two,
last year.
two.
2 races last year, I think it was. This year he drove Vettel's COVID race. Last year he drove 2 races, I think.
Did he not do two COVID races for Seb this year? Or am I making that up? Or was
You
that
would
last
know
year?
better than me. You should know better than I do.
I should know,
So
but I
yeah,
don't.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. He's not had like the tons of experience on the grid in the recent years, especially in the new era cars. But we'll see what happens. 2 more races to the end of the season. I'm sure we'll get more answers.
Yeah.
In saying that, let's kind of round it up. Yeah, who is your loser of the weekend?
I haven't even thought about this. Oh no, Alonso. Duh, obviously.
Damn
Calm as a
it,
bit.
you took mine.
We can share the same guy. Like obviously it's Alonso. Like that was just guaranteed.
I always try and do a different person to you, but he just, yeah, I think he was a bit of an arse hat this weekend. I found a tweet from like 2012, literally 10 years ago, where I called him an unsportsmanlike douche and said that I'd never support him ever again. So, yeah, clearly I was very true to my word.
Yeah, I like it. Your winner.
I'm gonna give my winner to Lewis, for getting a good second position on the podium, and I'm really proud of him because I think, yeah, it's been a long time coming that he's kind of pushing further and further and further. And other than there's not that many people that had a great race this weekend, I don't think. So yeah, very few to choose from.
Yeah. Lewis was mine, but I will go with Checo just because I think, he's like the man of Mexico. He managed to get himself on the podium. It wasn't a win, but he managed to get P3. So yeah, well done to him.
That wraps up our Mexico GP race review. Let us know what you think. Did you like the Mercedes strategy? Did you think that they did really well? Are you a Red Bull fan and you just were happy to see Max and Checo on the podium? Yeah, let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. And next round is the Brazilian Grand Prix, which I am really looking forward to. It's always a good race for Lewis, and I like the atmosphere there. Last year we saw all the purple flares, so I'm actually really looking forward to it. And we'll be back then. In the meantime, please follow us, like, subscribe. We are at On the Chicane on all of our socials, and we look forward to seeing you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.